Recently, I got to borrow Fuji's new X-E5 camera with their new 23mm f2.8 pancake lens. This isn't a sponsored video. They don't get to see it before it goes live. They haven't paid me any money. I have to return the camera when I'm done with it, and all opinions here are my own. But this is a camera and lens that I was already intrigued by, and so it was nice to be able to test it out and see how it holds up and how it feels in comparison to the X-T5 that I'm already really familiar with. It seemed like it had the potential to be a great vacation camera and a great everyday camera, similar to the X100 series. So I decided to take it with me on a family reunion on the Maine coast a few weeks ago. This wasn't a dedicated photography trip, but it's such a photogenic place that I definitely wanted to have a nice camera with me, but also didn't want to bring a huge camera bag around everywhere. I also took a lot of shots of family, and a bunch of those turned out really well. But I'm not going to show most of those on here, except for a few of the backs of people's heads and such, since they didn't sign up to be on the internet and have their vacation turned into a YouTube video. That wouldn't be fair to them. In any case, I still got quite a few shots that I'm happy to share on here, and I'll talk a little bit about my first impressions of the X-E5 and the new 23mm f2.8 lens from Fuji. The most obvious thing is the size and weight. The X-T5 that I normally use is pretty small and light as well, but it's enough of a difference to where I can wear the smaller X-E5 on a neck strap pretty much all day, and I don't really ever get tired of it. For an everyday or vacation camera, that's a pretty important factor for me. I'll say the build quality feels surprisingly good, especially for a camera of this price. I mean, it's not super cheap, but it's not a Leica either. I think the top is a piece of solid machined aluminum. It feels like the same kind of build quality as my MacBook Pro, which is nice to see. It just feels like a somewhat premium product. I've only used it for a little bit, so I don't know how well it'll hold up over years of use and abuse, but from first impressions, it's definitely nice. The battery life is noticeably worse than on the X-T5, but the battery itself is physically quite a bit smaller too, so that's sort of to be expected. If I owned this camera, I would just have a few extra of these batteries like I do for the Ricoh GR3X, which also has a tiny battery. But since I'm only borrowing it and only had the one battery, I definitely was more aware of that limitation and had to bring along a little USB battery brick to charge it up midday if I was shooting a lot. Switching between photo and video mode on this camera is a little clunkier than I like. On the X-T5, there's simply a switch that you flick that makes that swap really easy. On here, I have to press a button and then scroll down to make the switch. It's not a big deal, but it's definitely something that I noticed in comparison to what I'm used to. I think where this camera really shines though is just using it for photos, but the video specs are pretty impressive for a camera like this, and I was happy with the footage that I got. But if I was using this for photo and video at the same time consistently, it is a little bit annoying to have to switch back and forth like that in just a little bit clunkier of a way. I think some people will enjoy the dedicated film simulation dial, and it was nice to be able to add 3 custom recipes to the custom slots on that dial. You can also add 7 or 8 more recipes elsewhere and get to them via a quick menu or a custom assigned button, and that all works fine, but it's a little bit clunky to have recipes assigned in different areas of the camera, and only some of them allow you to add names describing the recipe. So for the 3 custom ones on the dial, you kind of just have to remember what you put where. It ended up not really mattering for me because I pretty much just used one JPEG recipe for the whole trip, but it does feel like there's probably a more elegant solution out there that I would love to see on future cameras. Maybe have all of the slots on the dial be completely customizable, or maybe something else. It's fine, but it's just a little bit of a weird design choice that might get annoying if you think you'll want to consistently use more than 3 customized film recipes at a given time. I do prefer having a dedicated ISO dial, but that's one of the trade-offs that they had to make in going with a smaller camera body like this. I think it probably makes sense for who they're targeting with this camera. If it were me, I'd probably choose an ISO dial over the dedicated film simulation dial. It's not really a big deal, and it's easy enough to assign one of the custom wheels on the front or back to ISO if you want. The tilt screen is fine, but I'm a little bit spoiled with the X-T5 in that it can flip up and down, but also tilt to the side. This one does flip all the way up though, to where you can see it from the front of the camera in selfie mode. So that's nice if that's something you'd use. You can't do that on the X-T5. but I did find myself missing the side tilt function that the X-T5 has when I was shooting vertically, either down low or up high. The autofocus, like any Fuji camera, was plenty good for this kind of photography. It's not quite as good as some of the other brands like Sony, but for the kind of photography that I'm doing these days, and for the kind of photography that most people would buy this camera for, it's perfectly fine. The lens is nice because it's really small, and it's a focal length that works well for me most of the time. f2.8 is a stop slower than the lens that you would get on the X100 series, and it's a stop slower than the larger f2 prime that I normally use, but it's a small enough lens that that's a trade-off that I'm happy to make in a lot of situations. And then if I need a longer focal length, I can easily swap on the 50mm prime or something else. You can't do that with the X100 series. So that's pretty nice, even if most of the time I'm fine using the 35mm equivalent focal length. I'll also say that this lens definitely feels a little bit slower in the focusing than some of the other ones that I have, and the focusing motors are definitely louder. I don't think this camera is marketed as being weather sealed, and I didn't get a chance to test that out. It was sort of surprisingly hot and humid and mostly sunny on the whole trip. But for me, since I live in Seattle and it does rain here quite a bit, that would give me pause before using this as my everyday camera. I know even cameras that aren't weather sealed can hold up to some rain, but just for peace of mind, I would probably prefer using something that is marketed as weather sealed if I'm going to be using it in the rain. So who is this camera for? I think it's a great starter camera. I think it's a great second camera for people who have bigger setups and might want something smaller for everyday or vacation use. Basically, I think it fills the same niche as the X100 or anything else in that series, but with the added benefit of being able to swap out different lenses if you want. In return for that, you lose the built-in ND filter, you lose one stop of light if you use this pancake lens, and you lose the optical viewfinder. Those are all trade-offs that are worth it for me for this kind of camera, but other people might weigh those options differently. Regardless, we now have one more option in the Fuji lineup that I think will be a great camera for a lot of people. Personally, I think I'll stick with the X-T5 for now since it's not that much bigger, and I just don't need both right now, but I'm glad I got to test it out. I still have a few more weeks and a few different trips with the X-E5, so if I have any more thoughts beyond these first impressions, I'll let you know in the next video. Again, this video is not sponsored, but I do want to take a moment to thank my Patreon members for supporting the channel. That's the best way to directly support my work on here, and in return, you get access to bonus content, including monthly update videos, thoughts on the business of photography and how I'm selling prints and doing all of that, additional photos that don't make it into a video or a newsletter, and quite a bit more. I also have a monthly email newsletter where I send out new photos. I do that instead of Instagram these days. You can find links to both of those down below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next month. Bye.